Just give me a second and I'll be. Okay. All right. So, excuse me. Okay. So today we're dealing with Pluto. This is our last class in the transits classes. So Pluto is the farthest out planet. You know, like that, well, they're discovering new planets may be longer and longer, but really they'll all be longer orbits than Pluto, and they'll be more extreme scenarios to be harder to personalize them, or it'll take some time before we know how to personalize them. But Pluto is the farthest, is this tiny, cold, distant planet that we didn't know hardly anything. Even when I started astrology, hardly anything was known about it. When Mark Edwin Jones was doing astrology in the 20s and 30s, he had to start. Pluto was discovered, and a lot of his work was about trying to develop the meanings of Pluto and what it would mean past Neptune. And really, those images of Pluto and the implications of Pluto have become more vividly real as astrologers watched it, as we interpret the experiences that happen, as we've watched the timings, we've seen when they happen, we've watched how they happen, and we look back and we see them. So it's become more clarified or clearer. Still a lot of difficult information or questionable information about every planet out there, but it's just like any person. You get good information, and there's a lot of difficult information. It takes time, and if you're lucky, you figure out what's real. But Pluto, being this cold, distant planet, it's as far away from the sun as farther than anything. So if your sun is the warmth and the light of your heart and your radiance, your confidence and your radiance, Pluto is this little distant tiny dot, a speck way out there. Can't even see it. It's way out there. It's moving around. It's almost like, how could it seemingly have an influence? But I think what happens, it certainly has its influence. It certainly, because it moves slowly, and when it goes around, it spends the year or two in 1 degree, going back and forth over it, like the other outer planets. It's going to take, we go through these experiences. We're going to get 2-year crises from Pluto. But Pluto, it's like the voice of truth. But truth has a double-edged sword of what it could mean. You know, if you're looking from your heart and you're confident and you're radiant in your own life, you're in the center of everything. That's its own truth. But if you start measuring things out, you start looking at things out in the world, you start watching what's happening in the world, you start looking at things that are happening in the world, you start being pulled out of your heart and empowering other things. And each planet pulls us out or into various degrees, away from just clear, unconditional radiance and love. So what's reality? What's truth? It's different for everybody. It depends how you've crystallized into life or how your consciousness is crystallized. But Pluto is like the voice of the news. Are you going to live your daily life based on just what you hear in the news, or how much are you going to bring the news into your day? The worry, the darkness, the wars, the difficult things happening out in the world. How much do you need to know them, and how much do you need to have it interfere with your basic radiance and confidence? So Pluto's a definite puzzle. It's a block. If you're empowering Pluto, or when power gets in Pluto empowered by when it's making the strong aspects, the close aspects, the conjunction aspects, it gets empowered, and there becomes this nerve. It's like you can have a big healthy body, but if someone sticks a needle in you, or you hit your tip of your finger with a hammer, you're screaming and you're not thinking about the rest of your whole body. Okay, so the We all have this sense of where the world is, what the news is, what the truth is, what's going on in the world, where it is, and what's it for. And it's really, if we're living just according to that outer worldly truth, well, you could miss love, you could miss spiritual development, you could miss a lot of things. At the same time, if you're being untrue and just being deluded and gullible out there, and you're attached to the dream, the truth can break through the dream, and you might not want to let that happen. So Pluto wants to break up the dream of Neptune. The same with excitement. Well, you're attached to the excitement, you're trying to be independent of that. But the truth is, how many people care? What's happening? Pluto sits there looking at it, challenging it. Now, so Pluto, I think if I would give it a title for Pluto or a concept for Pluto, it's truth and consequences. If you tell someone you love them when you really just like them, sooner or later, that truth will become obvious, or the fruits of that seed, of the seeds of that truth will become manifest. And by the time they're showing and you're seeing, or everyone's seeing that's not true, that wasn't exactly true, you weren't really in love, that wasn't exactly true, you're going to have dire consequences. It'll be hard to rebuild. Not impossible, but very difficult. So the limits of what your knowledge or what your truth could be, of what your sense of this world is, that's there. But we usually see these truth and consequences. So truth and the consequences of truth, really the consequences of truth come up and hit us in our face. And then we have to find the truth of it. What's really true? Oh, Jesus has happened. Oh, what's true? So it comes up like a confrontation. Pluto brings confrontations to the surface. And it brings deep confrontations to the surface, things we don't normally want to deal with or face. So I guess, so confrontation is another common word in use with the energies of Pluto. Another word would be a reality check. It's like the Pluto is the auditor general of the solar system. Saturn's the law and the accountant and the books and the structure, but Pluto is like Saturn's the judge, but Pluto really is the extreme effect of the law. It's like Pluto in mythology was never a demon. He was in charge of the underworld. He was never an unjust god, but he was ferociously just. If you did something wrong, you'll pay absolutely for it. So this idea of harsh truth, reality check. Wow. How do you say? The reason beautiful men and handsome men and beautiful women, even though there's a God, is that beautiful women and handsome men turn 50. There's a reality check. And most people have to deal with that reality check earlier because they're not the most beautiful or most handsome. But then the most beautiful handsome, they get away with things. They don't have to realize, oh, geez, I'm getting older, till they're older. And it can be very challenging, very confronting. And so when we have these confrontations and these reality checks happen, our first reaction is usually fear. So we run into a conflict, we're afraid. Oh my goodness, I don't want this to happen. Oh my goodness, oh, what's going to happen? And then we empower the fear. That's Pluto in its prime. We have the fear come up, we're empowering the fear, we're confronted by the fear. And we're not going to be able to escape, we're going to have to deal with it. So if you're doing your business and suddenly the auditor comes down on your door, is knocking on your door and comes into your door, it's too late for you to go hide the books or hide things outside the door. You're going to have to face the consequence. The accountant, the auditor is there. They're going to look at the books and going to decide what's there, and you're going to have to deal with it, even if you've been avoiding it for years. So Pluto is this auditor general, this confrontation, this reality check. Who do you think you are? So you can't just look at it and say it's fear. It has the potential of being fear. The more fearful, the more you're afraid of something, the more fearful and the more power you give to Pluto. The more truthful you are. Just because you're afraid of something doesn't mean you have to make your decisions and live your life in fear. Just because you're you can still be afraid and make your decisions based on the truth of that's there. So I have to do this. But it could cost me a life, but I have to do this. I guess you could say another good quote for Pluto. It's an English expression that may not, it's not the most polite expression. It's just a shit or get off the pot. There's a lineup. You can't just sit there. That's a trivial Pluto pursuit. So dealing with the consequences, fessing up, facing things, confronting things, it can come so many ways. You can bring up a kid in a beautiful world and the kid gets in trouble with the law or drugs and suddenly you get confronted by that. You can be in love with something, they're leaving you with someone else. It could be a health thing. It could be so many things can cause fear or cause confrontation. Like someone could be afraid because their breasts are too small, so they have an operation to get bigger breasts, and then all of a sudden they find that their breast implants aren't working, and a lot of people are not working, and they have the fear of, am I going to get cancer or not, or what's going to happen from this? So millions of ways we can empower this fear. From the looking of love or from our heart, it's trivial. Fear just melts it dissolves in the face of sunlight or light. Darkness disappears in the face of lightness. It makes the light stand out more. But when you give importance to the darkness, when you give importance to the fear, when you give importance to the confrontation, and oh my goodness, and you have a fear that you're not up for it or you don't want to face something, then Pluto becomes really empowered and becomes much more magnified. So as we go through this, you're going to see your times and when these things happen. And so you may think, oh, it was just that. But in the actual mechanics of going through that across a couple of years, you had run-ins with fear and confrontations. There were power, so the confrontations come. You can see confrontations as a power struggle over something. Someone's blocking your way and you're trying to fight it and you can't get it, or you can, or you get sacked or something. Like, whoa, there's some severity there. It can happen psychologically as anxiety or depression. I don't want to face this. I can't lose this job. I can't have this. And you're losing it. Or you can lose the relationship. You go, I can't be alone. And you have the fear or anxiety. So a lot of times, really high-strung anxiety is tied up to Pluto. Really despondent, fearful anxiety is tied into Pluto. Now, so it's always there. It's there in our chart. From the time we're born, it moves around the chart. It'll never get halfway around the chart in our lifetime. So it has its own, right, just gotta fix my